We can make China a peaceful country.
Have you ever said no to Beijing?
Yes, for many times. I'm telling you the fact. Why don't you listen?
Politicians in Taiwan have been out campaigning in presidential primaries ahead of next year's election, with the topic of relations with China very much on the agenda. My guest this week, outside the capital Taipei, is周锡玮, who's been seeking the nomination of his pro-Beijing party, the Kuomintang. As China pushes with increasing urgency for reunification and the Taiwanese continue to reject it, what on earth has his party got to offer?周锡玮, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You said the only way to resolve antagonism between China and Taiwan is to talk and to love.
Yes.
How do you love a China that is threatening Taiwan both verbally and militarily and holding a sword over your head continually? How do you love that?
Well, that's your impression. Actually, if you talk to some Chinese in mainland China, as long as you don't support separation from China, they will not treat you like that. They will not attack you.
Oh, so don't say the wrong thing, otherwise China will attack.
Right.
And you normalize that. You think that's a normal way to live? That a power across 180 kilometers of the strait says to you, if you say the wrong thing, you're finished.
Well, I don't think it's that serious. You have to talk to each other.
They keep saying it.
I think you have to talk to each other. If you try to visit China, so-called China, we call it mainland. Okay, we are Taiwan. They are mainland. We together is a China. It's one China. Well, if you think the threats from China is so serious to Taiwan, why do you European people, all the people around the world, all the members in the UN try to work with China, try to have dialogue with China, try to solve problems with China?
It's trade. You know that as well as I do. It's not their human rights record, is it?
Then we can
do
that, and we can do that too.
Apart from trade, what exactly does democratic Taiwan have in common these days with one-party communist China? You have free elections.
Yes,
you
we
can
have free
change your
elections.
party in power. They don't. You have independent courts. They don't. You have a free press. They don't. You can speak out against abuses of power, and they can't. What on earth have you got in common with mainland China these days?
I think we should emphasize the differences. Go there, work with them, be their friends, be their brothers, and change them. Instead of being their enemies, go there, work with them. You can change them. Like what you are doing with them now. Do you concern about human rights?
What on earth is the
China?
evidence that you can change them? What on earth is the evidence?
Well, you see the trade surplus, China with mainland, right? You see a lot of changes in Hong Kong recently. Why China is not using force to press down the demonstration? Why they compromise? Why? Because they seek opportunity to prove they can change, they can improve.
We'll come on to Hong Kong a little later. I want to go into some detail on that. But the serious issue is the military pressure from China, isn't it? Even 2 years ago, your government's National Defense Report highlighted concerns that Chinese military activity near Taiwan posed an enormous threat to security in the Taiwan states. Now, just a few days ago, you had Washington saying that China has stepped up its pressure campaign, seeing the largest increase in military activity around Taiwan for 20 years. And you think that's meaningless?
Why U.S. say China is going to interfere in the election in Taiwan, so U.S. is coming here to interfere in Taiwan's election?
You happy with these bullying tactics?
No,
because that's what they are.
I'm not happy about bullying thing, but
that's what China's doing.
I'm happy about, we can do business with each other. We can ask China to make changes. We are the only people on earth believe that we can make that happen. We can make China a peaceful country. When you look back the history, who are the invaders? Who are the invaders? Japan, right? Who participate in the wars in Asia?
You want to live in history or you want to live in the present?
No, I want to
live in the present.
In modern
and you
society.
Want to assure people's future.
I want to make history clear that who are the invaders. Okay, If you want to be someone's enemy, then they will be your enemy. If you want to be someone's friend,
Oh, if only
then
life
you can
was
be
that
my friend.
easy. If only life that was easy.
Let me tell you one thing. Why U.S. is selling F-16 to Taiwan instead of F-35, and U.S. is selling F-35 to Korea, to Japan, to Singapore, to other countries? Why the United States gave the Diaoyu Island to Japan instead of Taiwan? It was our territory. Why the U.S. is doing that to Taiwan?
Mr. Cho, Katie Chen, Vice President of the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, said last month that more and more Taiwanese feel their nation is now under existential threat. And you seem to be out of touch with that feeling totally, don't you? You don't feel under existential threat.
I feel the reality. I feel the reality. I know how to deal with the Chinese in mainland. I know what's the facts. I know.
You haven't had to deal with them. You haven't had to deal with them as a politician.
I try to deal with them. When I was the mayor here, the biggest city mayor, I worked with the city in Nanjing. I try to communicate with them. I try to work with them, try to ameliorate carbon emission issues, environmental issues, education issues. We work with them.
What about the diplomatic front, where they continue to squeeze you, where they ramp up the pressure, where they try and persuade countries to drop their recognition, diplomatic recognition of you?
You did that, not China.
You lost it. China didn't do that?
Remember this.
You lost
in
3 in 2018
no.
thanks
right.
to Chinese
right.
pressure. You're now down to 17 countries.
And thank you. You recognize China. You don't recognize the Republic of China. You recognize People's
Taiwan,
Republic of China.
when you're talking about Republic of China.
No, the Republic of China is Taiwan. We were the representative of China before 1971, and the UN.
I took precedence.
UN
You
sent
always
us
go back
out
to history.
and
You
say
always
the
go back to
PRC.
history.
No, I'm telling the fact. We exist here. The ROC is here, and that's what you call the Taiwan. But you never recognize the ROC here. You recognize the PRC, right? Well, in the UN, I read an article recently. We adhere to one China policy as regards to Taiwan and Hong Kong. And I think it should be defined like this. We adhere to one China policy as regards to mainland, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau.
Mr. Cho, you're not talking about China that continues efforts to thwart Taiwan's participation in international organizations like the World Health Organization and Interpol, for instance. You want to be members of those organizations.
We want to.
China
only you can help us.
Is trying to stop it.
Why you agree to stopping us?
Why do you never criticize
participating?
China? Are you scared? Are you scared of China?
Everybody. I'm criticizing everyone.
No.
Even China too.
No,
they shouldn't do that. I didn't say that.
We've read a lot of
I haven't
what you've
had
said.
time to express my opinion about China's
no time to say,
and
hey,
stop.
This is wrong.
No,
I
have to tell you one more thing. The UN, the EU, even Germany, you recognize the PRC. You don't recognize the ROC. And I truly hope one day you recognize the ROC. You help us to participate, WHO, okay,
And you think China isn't going to block that? Yes,
well, we can talk to them. We should try to talk to them.
Oh, you're talking as achieved such great results.
No, KMT.
It's achieved such great results.
KMT did that. KMT did that. KMT tried to talk to mainland China, and they tried to let us participate.
Mr. Cho,
especially WHO and ICAO.
Mr. Cho, Beijing is clearly losing patience with Taiwan, while you dream of some vague love-in between Taipei and the mainland. China is crystal clear what it wants from you, and that's reunification. And it refuses to rule out the use of force to get it, doesn't it? And you live with that, and you normalize that on a daily basis.
Okay, in our constitution.
Instead of saying to them, you can't do that. You can't insist on it.
ROC constitution, okay, there's only one China policy, and that includes mainland, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. That's in our constitution. We should abide by our constitutional rights.
You're being told by Xi Jinping, as you were in January, unification is an inevitable requirement for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese people. He said, Taiwan should accept that it must and will be reunited with China. Whatever talks you've been having with China hasn't got them out of that idea. And how many people in Taiwan want that reunification? Under 3%.
Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about what the people think.
Don't worry about what the people think. But don't worry about their threatening words.
Why don't you stand up to those threatening words?
Well, we stand up too.
You don't.
We stand up to that. But in our constitution, remember,
Taiwan must and will be reunited with China. That's an ultimatum.
Have you tried to take a look of our constitution? Have you tried to take a look of our laws?
Mr. Cho, I'm looking at what China is saying
in our
to
laws
you.
And in our constitution, we want a peaceful relationship. We want a unification.
The people don't.
It's true.
The people don't.
No, that's in our law and the constitution.
The people don't. It doesn't matter what the people want.
Then try to amend the constitution. That's your perception. Our people here want to have a peaceful relationship with the mainland. And we want to make money. We want to do business together. We want to have a democracy in the future in mainland China, but not fighting against them, not taking them as an enemy, trying to be their friends and try to change them by participation, like what you do in the Europe.
That's working so well, isn't it? The reality is, Mr. Cho, that Beijing's push on unification puts your party, the Kuomintang, into a very difficult position, doesn't it? Your veteran China expert, Su Qi, actually said that. He said, Xi Jinping took away all the space for ambiguity, and that puts us, the Kuomintang, in a very difficult situation. That difficulty being that your party is being told, get on with this by China, and you don't have a policy of standing up to it, do you?
I do have a policy.
What is it?
I declare that. I claim that. I want to unify China. I want to unify
under Taiwan's
mainland.
Rules.
Yes.
Some chance. 23 million people in Taiwan against more than a billion.
I have the courage to say that. That's my policy.
It's
not fantasy.
It's fantasy.
You have to remember
the history,
in the world. You have to understand the history in the world. What's happening now? Unification, separation? Yes. Yes, that's the process. Unification, separation, separation, unification. That's the track of the history. But there's one thing very important.
It's not what the people want. Never mind the track of history.
Why don't you try to help us?
Track of history is just words, isn't it? Track of history is just words.
It's the facts.
The question is what people want now. And the fact is that the vast majority of your population don't want unification with China. Have you ever stood up to China?
I stand up.
Have you ever said no to them?
I stand up for the Republic of China.
Have you ever said no to Beijing?
Yes, for many times.
What, on human rights issues, for instance?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
The continuing crackdown on human rights activists?
When Tiananmen issue accident happened.
That was 30 years ago.
I vetoed them.
That was 30 years ago.
Whenever I went to China, I told them you need to introduce democracy to your society.
Oh, they're listening.
Yes,
they're really
you're listening.
So we see the biggest crackdown in 25 years taking place on human rights activists. Human Rights Watch reported last year, human rights defenders continue to endure arbitrary detention, imprisonment, and enforced disappearance.
Yes.
And you say nothing about that.
Have you heard I said anything about that? I did.
Just now.
I even told them. Because you don't know my history dealing with them. I have many dialogues with them. I told them you have to improve. That's human rights. That's international standards of treating your people. I told them to. Okay? I have to tell you one thing. If you don't participate, if you don't join them, if you don't treat them like they can improve, then nothing good is going to happen.
It's a fine line between that and appeasement, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a very fine line.
Yes, very fine line. It's very ambiguous. But you have to do that from your heart. People know that.
Ever spoken up for the Taiwanese democracy activist Li Ming-che? It's more than 2 years since he was forcibly disappeared. You hadn't heard of him. Li Ming-che. It's more than 2 years since he was forcibly disappeared by police in China's Guangdong province and charged with subversion of state power. He's a citizen of Taiwan. You don't talk about it. You don't even know his name.
No.
He's in terrible conditions. Human rights groups around the world have been campaigning for his release.
No, what about our government?
He's sentenced to 5 years in jail. Can't
Yes.
get phone calls, can't get letters. 4 times his wife was prevented from going to mainland China to visit him. And
You know,
his rights are being abused.
around 20 years ago, I tried to talk to Chinese communists to release an espionage suspect, a lady who just got married and who's released recently. I talked to our government too, when Kuomintang was the ruling party, and they didn't step in. They didn't try to rescue her. She was sentenced to death. However, in jail for 20 years. And just a year ago, she was released. Probably just in this year, she was released. And look what the people here have done to help human rights. You know, we should try to work together, and we should try to talk to them. And what the government here do.
Let's talk about Hong Kong again. You mentioned it earlier in the interview. And you were praising China that they had shown restraint with the demonstrators.
I'm not praising them for that.
Who started this in the first place?
Okay, that's the law, right? For what?
The demonstrators will tell you that it was the constant erosion of their freedoms under the one country, two systems formula
Right.
that forced them onto the streets anyway. The denial of universal suffrage, the kidnapping of booksellers, the banning of a political party, the prevention of elected legislative councillors taking their seats because they didn't like their politics. It's
No.
that constant erosion of freedom under the one country, two systems. That's the system that Xi Jinping is offering you. One country, two systems.
I suggest you take a look what's happening here in Taiwan, in the ROC. The ruling party, DPP, who claimed that they protect human rights. They
Can we
protect
stay with Hong
democracy.
Kong?
No, I have to tell one
is it
thing.
embarrassing?
Same thing happening here. That's the reason why it's so embarrassing. Because our ruling party is trying to enact martial law here, doing something even worse. And there is one law related to national security. You know, that's what they are doing here. Our ruling party here in Taiwan. Of course, we criticize the Hong Kong government, especially the council, try to establish a law which Hong Kong residents disagree and doesn't trust. So that leads
So you
to
blame
this
Carrie Lam
demonstration.
for that, do you? The
Excuse
chief
me?
executive? You blame Carrie Lam, the chief executive. She's Beijing's appointee, isn't
Right,
she?
she's the appointee. Even so-called elected by some Hong Kong representatives.
Why is she still there? Why hasn't she resigned?
Well, ask Hong Kong people. Ask Hong Kong people. It's their democracy. It's their system. Ask Hong Kong people.
Let me come back to the question.
One thing is important. They withdraw the law draft, right?
They've suspended it. They've said it's
No,
dead,
they
but
said
it's still there.
They've said
it's dead.
No, they said they withdraw because they did something wrong. They admit. I think
They're
that's
just
something.
not proceeding with it at the moment.
No, that's what's happening before. Now they say they withdraw.
You're satisfied it's over.
No, I'm not satisfied about that. I'm worried about what's happening here in Taiwan.
And the one country, two systems formula that Xi Jinping has offered to Taiwan,
We don't
that's
agree.
dead.
No, that's
Not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Then you mean Hong Kong is not going to have different systems from China's system?
Isn't the lesson
I think the system should exist because that's the window shop for Chinese. They should show that improvement of democracy to the world, Hong Kong system. They should. If they try to violate that, it's going to embarrass them.
Mr. Cho, isn't a lesson that you should take away from Hong Kong is that China doesn't live up to its promises on democracy? Isn't that the lesson?
I think.
Despite you talking and wanting to love China, they don't live up to their promises, do they?
I think we should try to change them. We should try to improve them.
You should first say no to them.
Well, how do you know I didn't say no to them? I've been doing that for so many years. Every time I visited China, I talk to them. I say, improve your system. especially a democratic system.
And they step up their interference with
Well,
Taiwan.
they listen.
Look at
They
the
listen.
propaganda war that's being waged against Taiwan. A study by the University of Gothenburg in Sweden said you're one of China's major targets for spreading disinformation. Happy about that? Direct interference.
Well, I think
In your
the
political affairs.
ROC, so-called Taiwan, should be more open to outside world, especially Western societies.
You're avoiding the
we're
question
not
about
doing
China's
that.
disinformation campaign. Yeah.
Well, China is trying to do that, but other countries also try to do that too. I think we should take active actions in solving their problems. We're a very open society, but not open enough to the outside world. Take a look how many English-speaking channels here. Take a look about how much international media existing here in Taiwan. We're not exposed enough to the outside world. However, the politicians here try to close the door.
China tries to close your door.
We.
China wants international isolation for you.
We emphasize localization so much instead of internationalization. That's what's
You don't want to see what China's doing, do you?
No, we need to improve ourselves first.
You don't want to admit it?
No, we want to improve ourselves too. We also want to improve China. Remember, I want to take active process, active approach to China to make China change.
This idea that you can make China change, which frankly is pretty much of a long shot. Why should people vote for your party next year?
Well,
if you're selling fantasies like that, why?
No, we're not selling fantasies. Be realistic. It's a difficult competition. Why don't you try to realize what DPP can do?
DPP is the ruling
can
party.
Influence
the ruling
election. And why don't you take a look what we're fighting for? We're fighting for true democracy here. And DPP is a ruling democracy here. We're trying to build up a peaceful relationship with China, with the mainland. We're trying to create a better society here. We're trying to introduce your systems, your values here to Taiwan. We're trying so hard to do that. If we want to convince all people here that KMT can rule this country perfectly well, then we have to respect the democracy. We have to open our society to the outside world. We have to be honest to our people. But our ruling party is cheating our people.
Well, the bad news for you is that a plurality of Taiwanese, 45%, don't identify with your party or the ruling DPP.
Take a look. You're right. They don't trust the parties here.
Yeah, they don't trust you and they don't trust them.
They don't trust all parties.
You're not saying anything that they think is relevant.
Well, I believe that what they're saying is relevant. We realize the fact already. People don't trust the parties here. People don't trust the politicians here. Which is
Why would they trust you? I mean, you said in the second primary debate, you claim that the number of Taiwanese people below the poverty line was believed to be around 3.8 million.
Right, which is a fact.
It's simply not true.
It's
simply not true.
It's true.
The Pew Research Organization says Taiwan proportionally contains fewer people living in poverty than any other country in Asia.
No. Let me tell you one thing.
Almost no Taiwanese live on less than $2 US
you don't
a day.
Listen to me patiently. You know, when I was the mayor in Taipei County, there are around 1/4 of the students couldn't afford their lunch. That's 1/4. If you times that proportion to the total population here in Taiwan, I'm telling you the fact. I'm not lying. I'm telling you the fact.
That's not the facts.
That's the fact. I'm telling you the fact. Why don't you listen?
Almost no Taiwanese live on less than $1.9 US a day. That's the global poverty line.
That's the definition of poverty.
That's global
Our
poverty
definition
line.
of poverty is different.
Oh, really?
My definition of poverty.
Relative to you?
Right, yes.
Relative to where you live?
Yes, that's my definition.
And
you can criticize my
splendor.
definition.
You live in splendor.
I can tell you, if any student cannot afford their lunch, then his family is living in poverty. That's my definition.
If it all goes wrong here in Taiwan, and Xi Jinping loses patience, and somebody says something they shouldn't say, and China looks as though it's moving towards an invasion. Would you fight for Taiwan or not? Where do your ultimate loyalties lie, Mr. Cho?
We are loyal to our country, the Republic of China. We are loyal to our constitution.
You would fight China, would you?
Yes.
Yes.
If they violated our constitution to preserve and protect our people and defend our people, I'll fight against China.
周锡玮, it's been good to have you on Conflict Zone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.